The first on the list is the Association for Defending Victims of Terrorism.
We would like to thank the report of the Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Iran. Violation of the civil and human rights, and particularly right to life, as the most fundamental human right recognized by the UN General Assembly, the HRC, and its special mechanism, is indeed very important. The report therefore should have reasonably addressed the violation of the right to life that have claimed the lives of more than 17,000 innocent Iranian citizens within the last 3 decades, who fell victim to the most barbarous terrorist attacks. To promote further protection for the victims of terrorism and to provide for due exercise of justice, the Special Rapporteur is kindly invited to address, among other things, the need for providing appropriate legal assistance and ensuring that legal proceeding is brought against terrorist organizations and their supporters, as well as help establishing an international criminal justice tribunal that could hear the complaints of the victims of terror and their descendants on their merits. Such preventive legal exercises could far positively contribute to the prevention of the widespread terrorism around the globe. As an Iranian civil society and human rights association that have suffered the loss of more than 17,000 innocent victims of terror, we also suggest the Special Rapporteur, among other measures, also consider adopting appropriate policies and mechanisms to make sure that the terrorist organizations and their supporters are denied access to any donations and assistance programs or social and political asylum. We are hopeful to learn about such preventive measures in his upcoming report. Thank you very much.
I thank for the statement, and I call on Verein Entwicklungspolitik.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. It is with the utmost respect that we praise and thank Dr. Ahmad Shahid for all his tireless efforts in his strive to shed light on the distressing situation on human rights in Iran. We note that each annual report becomes more precise as to the vast and concrete issues of human rights in Iran. Honorable Dr. Shahid, as your report highlights, the electoral system of Iran is consistent with corruption and far from free and fair, as the Guardian Council vets candidates aggressively on the basis of factional preferences. Furthermore, the double elections of 26 February was held in the absence of international observers. The Guardian Council is charged with supervising elections and approving of candidates to amongst other, the Assembly of Experts. The Council has played a central role in allowing only one interpretation of Islamic values to inform Iranian law, as they consistently disqualifies reform-minded candidates from running for the office. Mr. Mohammad Dastghaib is one of many who, despite previously holding membership of the Assembly, been rendered disqualified due to reformist views such as support for former presidential candidates Mousavi and Karoubi. Furthermore, 40 prisoners of conscience has, in an open letter, requested the Human Rights Council to renew the Special Rapporteur's mandate. Several of them have been subject to pressure in order to give public confessions claiming to report of Dr. Shahid being fabricated and false. We urge all member states of this esteemed council to support the renewal of the Special Rapporteur's mandate in order to hold the Islamic Republic of Iran accountable to its commitment to the international human rights mechanisms. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank you for your statement, and I call on Imam Ali's Popular Student Relief Society.
Mr. President, we would like to express our hopes and appreciation for every genuine human rights defender who is not limited in boundaries, cares the suffering of others, and follows the truth. We think there should be some frameworks to ensure ineffectiveness of political disputes and taste on enhancement of human rights. In comparison to the past, as an independent NGO formed by non-profit movements of university students to save children, we see less executive obstacles and restrictions by the side of the sovereignty in front of NGOs. Recently, the sound of NGOs is being respected and heard by governmental authorities, and a better view on the capabilities and effectiveness of NGOs has come into existence. In case of education and behaving with foreign refugees and immigrants, we have seen some improvements. Now, Afghan children have the right to study in official schools regardless of having identity documents. On the other hand, the process of constructive and systematic collaboration between responsible authorities and NGOs in the case of capital punishment for children who did crime under 18 still requires improvements. We have always expressed our opposition towards such sentences. With some limited collaboration, we have been able to rescue 25 people. Besides, due to lacks in implementation of Article 91 of the new Islamic Penal Code, we re-emphasize that the state considers the child legal age of 18 in all binding international treaties. Thank you.
I thank you, ma'am, for the statement, and I call on Baha'i international community.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the last 2 years, more than 100 shops belonging to Baha'is were shut down by the Iranian authorities because they were closed on Baha'i holy days, generally under the false pretense that such closures were against the law or were disrupting the market. There are 9 Baha'i holy days spread throughout the year, and even if all fall on a working day, they can hardly affect the lives of customers. Moreover, Iranian law permits discretionary closure for up to 15 days. But more significantly, when the Baha'i owners went to the relevant offices, they were repeatedly told that they would be allowed to reopen if they signed a document certifying that their shops would only be closed on public holidays, and this regardless of the city or province where the events took place. It is unfortunately a clear proof that these business closures are a systematic violation of freedom of religion or belief. However, combined with the other persecutions faced by the Baha'is in Iran, they then become part of a much broader plan. Since the inception of the Islamic Revolution, Baha'is have not been allowed to work in the public sector, and when they're employed in the private sector, agents from the Ministry of Information pressure their employers to dismiss them. Factories and businesses have been shut down or confiscated. Farmlands belonging to Baha'is have been appropriated. And the closure of small shops, which were one of the last avenues by which Baha'is could earn a decent living, can be seen as a final step in this series of persecutions. Moreover, it has been for over 30 years that Baha'i youth have been denied access to higher education in Iran, reducing the economic possibilities to open to them. The process of excluding young Baha'is is twofold, depending on when their belief is discovered by the authorities, either before registration, when their file is deemed incomplete, or during the course of their studies. Mr. Shahid, your report states that the Iranian authorities responded that Baha'is enjoy citizenship rights in Iran. When they're not allowed to study in order to have a profession and are denied business activities, how can it be said that Baha'is are treated as fully fledged citizens? And more importantly, what will become of them?
Your time is up. I apologize for that. I call on International Federation for Human Rights League.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Special Rapporteur, your work is essential to providing reliable information to the international community on the human rights situation in Iran, which remains of great concern. FIDH calls on the Council to extend your mandate. Around 1,000 prisoners of conscience are behind bars, including human rights defenders, journalists, trade unionists, women's rights and political activists, all jailed for peaceful activities. As of mid-January, at least 38 journalists and bloggers were in prison for exercising their right to free expression. Scores of followers of minority religions or beliefs are currently detained on politically motivated charges or for crimes related to the practice of their religion or belief. As of last September, they included 74 Baha'is, more than 90 Christians, and at least 5 Dervish Sufi Muslims. Provisions of the Constitution, the Civil Code and the Islamic Penal Code discriminate against women regarding marriage, divorce, custody of children, inheritance and nationality. Additional legislative plans underway would reduce women's participation in the labor market. Women are also barred from attending certain university courses and from entering stadiums to watch men's sports competitions. 2014 witnessed at least 743 executions, including 53 carried out in public. In 2015, around 1,000 people were executed, a record since 1989. About three-quarters of those executed had been charged with drug-related crimes, a large number of whom were poor and marginalized individuals and members of ethnic minorities, in particular the Kurds and Baloch and Afghan migrants. Crimes punishable by death include adultery, consensual sex between men, repeated consumption of alcohol, theft, cursing the prophets, economic crimes, religious and political offenses, and drug trafficking. Around 1,160 individuals who were under 18 at the time of the alleged crime are reported to be on death row. Up to 13 juvenile offenders were reportedly executed in 2014.
Thank you very much for your statement. Your time is up. I now call on Charitable Institute for Protecting Social Victims.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Iran is situated in the main transit route of drug producers, and that has caused extensive damages to people of Iran. According to Colonel's Office Organization, 8 people lose their lives to drug abuse every day. Drug abuse in Iran extensively affects the breaking up of families. The mental health expenses and social costs for families with addicted parents or children, and the cost of keeping and treating them, which is mainly provided by the government or NGOs, is very high. We condemn the killing of human beings, whether they are innocent people who die of drug abuse or criminals who receive capital punishment for drug-related crimes. We note the new approach of Iran's government, cooperation of the parliament and the judiciary for setting alternative punishments for drug-related crimes, and believe that this will greatly affect the reduction of execution for the crimes and promotion of citizens' rights. We believe that organized trafficking of drugs leads to violations of people's rights. Unfortunately, in Dr. Shahid's report, organized drugs crimes are not deemed as serious, and this is not fair to the victims of this crime. Mr. Vice President, as an NGO that is active in the prevention of social damages, we call upon the Human Rights Council and the Special Rapporteur to review all aspects of the issue. We also urge them to consult the civil, religious and legislative bodies in Iran so that they can carefully consider the seriousness of drug crimes. Without a doubt, politicizing such social issue will not solve the problem, but rather will make it even more complex. Thank you.
I thank you for your statement, and I call on Allied Rainbow Communities International.
The report of the Special Rapporteur draws attention to the fact that reform in the criminal code has left untouched the penalization of all forms of intimacy between people of the same sex. The report also notes the serious and systematic violation of the rights of women through a web of legislations which seek to keep women in a subordinate position. Expressions of intimacy between two men as well as between two women are severely punishable, with the ultimate punishment being the death penalty. Transgender persons, if they wish to get identity papers in the gender of their choice, have no option but to alter their bodies through hormones and surgery and become permanently and irreversibly infertile. We submit that there is a connection between the legislations which keep in place the subordination of women and the legislations which target and control LGBT expression. Both series of legislations seek to keep in place a binary gender system where what is to be a man and what is to be a woman is sought to be controlled by law. LGBT people who do not conform to culturally approved models of femininity and masculinity can be subject to persecution, arbitrary arrest and detention. Similarly, any attempt by women to break out of their legally enforced subordination and assert their equal rights is punishable. Mr. President, Iran must repeal the slew of laws which seek to imprison sexual and gender diversity within the iron cage of a man-made, artificially imposed gender two-binary system. Accepting the norm of equality of all people, regardless of their gender, sexual orientation, gender identity or gender expression, would be in conformity with the promise of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is the bedrock principle of human rights by which all nations are bound. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank you for your statement, and I call on Prevention Association of Social Harms.
Thank you, Mr. President. When attempts to promote human rights does not receive enough attention, the real picture of a human rights situation of a country cannot be seen. In the past few days, the representatives of 15 Iranian NGOs with ECOSOC status have been meeting Dr. Shahid, UN officials, and thematic special rapporteurs, trying to acknowledge the positive developments of human rights taken place as a result of government and NGOs' attempts. We would like to refer to the last paragraph of Mr. Shahid's report that, after almost 5 years of work to monitor the country's situation and to establish a constructive relationship with the government, the Special Rapporteur believes that the human rights situation in Iran merits a measure of confidence. We would like to highlight the results of the recent parliament elections in Iran, the countless efforts of NGOs to improve the situation of peoples in need, women in charge of households, health of social minorities, labor children, drug addicts, free education for refugee children, the support of social victims and attempts in considering the drug-related laws. We are proud that a large number of criminal children have been exempted from qisas as a result of our efforts. We would agree that the mentioned cases are considered as human rights, otherwise the Council would have not mandated more than 55 special mechanisms to promote these rights. Mr. President, due to the high potentials of Iranian NGOs, we are very optimistic about Iran's future. The improvements of human rights usually take place as a result of NGOs and people's attempts, negotiation and lobbying. Within the last 3 years, the efforts have escalated to the point that even Dr. Shahid himself considers his latest report as the most positive one since 2011. Thank you.
I thank you for your statement, and I call on Organization for Defending Victims of Violence.
Mr. President, there seem to be more extended opportunities for social and political participation of women in Iran. There has been 25 rounds of election in the country, and the most recent one was an Iranian legislative election held in February 2016. Estimates based on the latest results show that as many as 20 women are likely to enter the Iranian parliament. This is the highest number of the women entering the country's legislative body within the past 3 decades. Women also held high-ranking government jobs. Iran currently has a number of female vice presidents and 1 female ambassador. In addition, women have a strong presence in civil society. Despite the mentioned positive developments, the Special Rapporteur report section on elections mainly focused on the negative aspect of the recent legislative elections, including the case of candidates being considered disqualified, the pre-election arrests, etc. It's to be mentioned that lack of the due attention to the positive developments in Iran will not contribute to the improvement of human rights situation within the country. Mr. President, although there are various types of challenges ahead and women's participation in the social and political fields needs to be enhanced, the recent significant improvement in the field of civil and political rights should not be overlooked. Thank you.
I thank you very much for your statement. We're getting close to the end of the list of speakers that we can accommodate. The last will be Child Foundation.
Mr. Vice President, given the adverse consequences of sanctions against innocent civilians, including children, we believe that these sanctions should be classified as measures that violate human rights, and those who impose sanctions should be branded as violators of human rights. Child Foundation is active in a few countries and has been unable to have adequate access and provide sufficient assistance to children under its coverage in Islamic Republic of Iran. For the reason relating to sanctions, we either failed to dispense education and food help in time to our recipients, or we could not maintain our assistance at the same level in terms of quality. Mr. Shahid, if for any reason sanctions should be imposed, they should be targeted with their scope limited to military items. Years of sanctions have brought extreme pressure to bear on civilians and innocent people, including needy families and children. Such measures are definitely contrary to human rights. Fortunately, sanctions against Islamic Republic of Iran are decreasing, but still many banks fail to help transfer money. We propose that governments individually and at the level of UN system, they enact law prohibiting resources of sanctions with a view of achieving political aims, saving children and ordinary people from the impact of sanctions. I thank you.